All right, everybody, welcome to Money Never Sleeps, episode 7. We got 3 legends here and a bald guy. I've been so excited for this episode. It's been tough to bring it together. I think, we've been blessed to have so many wonderful artists on this show. Today, I think what's extra special is Zack, in my opinion, uh, is kind of the epic curator in the space and has been here since the jump. And not only is he a legendary curator, he's an incredible artist. And in fact, what was funny is it took me months of being friends with him and talking to him to realize I was like that he was an artist. Pindar, as many people who follow me know, I think Pindar's like 3 centuries ahead of the game. And then, of course, my frequent co-host and the funniest and coolest dude in the space die. So, as usual, we're going to let everyone ask questions, but I'm going to start with a question today. I spoke to Pindar this morning, and we were discussing like how do you characterize your art and what you do. And so, I'd like to open it up with the first question to each of the artists. How do you think about your art and what's important and why you do it and how you characterize it? Pindar, you want to kick it off based on your
sure.
legendary comments this morning?
Hey, thanks for the intro, and it is awesome. Like considering the amount of star power here with the other artists, and that's the ultimate question, right? What is our art? And I've been thinking about it a lot recently. So everyone that, if you don't know me, I make paintings and digital art, or I make paintings with robots, and I've gone from being this AI artist that would make paintings by exploring creativity with robots and AI to being a full-on digital crypto artist that's doing stuff on chain now, 100% on chain. So my art is kind of like, when I think about it, it's not even the artifact. I'll try and give a short answer to let everyone else in. My art is not even the artifact of what I'm creating, these ByteGANs, even paintings. My art's more the process of teaching artificial intelligence to try and create as closely as possible to me. So my art is studying my own creative process and trying to write code to mimic it with machines.
And I'll just jump in. I mean, Pindar has it so cool. He has robots creating art and then reacting to the art, and he'll do stuff like use dripping paint so the robots have to react to the dripping paint. So we maybe dig into it, but I mean, him and Matt Cain are kind of like the two people with me. I don't insult anybody else, but that jump out as. So Zack, why don't you hop in here as well? And Pindar and Zack have been very old friends, which is
collabs.
Cool.
Like all, it looks
actually,
like
you did collabs too with Zack.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no. So yeah, I mean, it's always funny referring to myself as an artist. For me, I never really like set out to be an artist or intended to be an artist. Like when I joined the SuperRare team back in early 2018, I was just surprised that like none of the founders were actually using the platform as an artist. And so like when I came in with a goal of like trying to grow the number of artists using the platform and grow the community, like I really felt like I needed to actually understand, what it felt like to use the platform from the artist's perspective. And so I started creating my Rose series, which, my roses are inspired by my sister Rose, who passed away back in 2016, a couple years before I joined SuperRare. And so it was all still, super fresh back then. And this kind of became a really great like therapy for me, like just creating art as a way to honor my sister, but also learn the tech and meet the other artists. Through that process, I've created 130 something of my roses on SuperRare. But a while ago, I kind of made the decision that I wanted all of them to be collabs with other artists. And so I really kind of started leaning into collaborating with other artists for my Rose series. I've collaborated with Dai and Pindar and many other artists on SuperRare. And so, I always feel like a little weird promoting my art when there's, so many other amazing artists on SuperRare and like thousands of artists trying to get onto SuperRare. And so it's it's always a little bit of a weird feeling for me. But, for me, really, it was always just about putting something out that, for me was a bit of therapy, but also just really a way to kind of connect, make friends. I mean, the really cool part for me is like I have a huge SuperRare collection of like older artworks, and I got a lot of them through really just creating rose artworks and sending them to artists for free on SuperRare, and then many of them would just send me back an artwork because I sent them one. And so like a lot of my early collection I built up just really like gifting roses to people, and then people would like gift me back an artwork sometimes. And so it's been a great, experience, playing both sides, being able to like see what it's like to be an artist. Like you really can't, as like a builder, and like that's, why I'm always on the founders about, starting to make art, because you really can't understand what it's like to use SuperRare or any of the platforms until you like actually have that feeling of receiving a bid from somebody on something that you created and put onto the internet. Like there's really nothing like it. And so, I mean, that's my art.
And Zach, independently, before Zach and I were close, I had the same conclusion. It's starting in last June. I started making art in AI every day, exploring Blender, exploring all the tools, teaching myself Procreate, Photoshop. I don't think you can be a good curator or have an eye for art if you don't know what the tools do and what's special or not special. And so, Zach's humble again. Zach has probably like one of the top like 5 wallets in NFTs. So, again, such a sweet guy and lovely guy. Yeah.
Before the house.
And Di, you've explained this before, but anything you want to add? We haven't discussed in prior shows.
No, nothing really, dude. I talk way too much in these things. Fuckable energy drink, the whole deal. I like just submitting people into madness and having a suffocating presence, more or less, and kind of being a documentarian of the space as a whole. But I feel like 2 interesting things about what Zack and Pindar said. For one thing, like I think the Roses series is such a emotionally it's such an insanely emotional series, and I felt like when I was asked to collaborate with that, like I was exploring shit that I hadn't really like thought about in my life, and like the things that like just mortality and legacy, and just like it was just a lot. It was a really heavy piece, and so like I feel like that is another part that I loved, and probably you have experienced by creating your own art, when you get to play off of each other and kind of like write an entirely new story with the piece. Like, did you feel that as well, like with all your collabs and stuff? Like I think, is that probably one of the most rewarding parts about it too? Or
I mean, for sure. I mean, many of the artists that I've collabed with have told me about their process through the collab, and like how it kind of made them feel something really special, and made them kind of remember their own loved ones, remember their own stories. And that's definitely been part of like what's special. I've tried to like share a bit about my sister with everybody that I've collabed with, so that they can, understand who she was. And I mean, it's been really special. And like Pindar actually, was kind enough to, take it upon himself to write an article about my series like a year or 2 ago. And, I've always really appreciated that. But Pindar's always been a friend and a supporter since, I mean, it was DevCon 2018. I had been with SuperRare for like 2 months or 3 months. I was in Prague, and there was like some sort of break time in the event, and I was on, I forget what it was online, but this YouTube video popped up of this artist that was like it was an HBO Vice video, and it was about this artist that was basically creating robots that were painting like humans. And I recognized the style a little bit, and I went and like checked SuperRare, and I was like, holy fuck, like this guy is on SuperRare. And so I like immediately like went back to the hotel, like I bought one of his pieces, or I offered him like 1 ETH for his piece, which is like $80 or something. And like that was also like the largest bid I had ever made, like by far at that point. And he accepted it. And then the next day he offered me 1 ETH for one of my pieces. And that also blew me away because like an ETH at that time for one of my pieces was ridiculous. And yeah, that like kicked off this long time friendship that, was one of my
you don't even realize this, Zach. Another time it's like sometimes it's luck and everything you've done for the space. The reason I love the Roses series is that Tennessee Jed collab. I was feeling super down. We artists, we go through ups and downs. Zach knows this. I'm like super happy 1 month and then like in the pits next. And I was in a really down period. And then Tennessee Jed's collab with Zack, the Roses, just came up. I couldn't believe how good it made me feel. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what the art is about. This is absolutely what the art is about. Collectors making stuff with feeling. Tennessee Jed had told me he had never done a painting in his life before that. And I thought that was so cool, tying it into the whole story of Rose. And I had to have that one. And I remember I put a bid on it, and you were so happy. You told Tennessee Jed, we got to accept this. And I actually have it. My office is a mess. I actually have it lying. I have it right there. But I should show people so they know what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can
show it. We'd love that.
Yeah. It'll take me a second. I'll wait till you guys are talking about something.
Well, while you're
go on.
Well, while you're looking, I mean, like, I just feel like that overall spirit, the not only collaboration, but also like the article that you wrote and like the willingness to just kind of like give into what you're passionate about is ultimately like the most, the most cherishable part and beautiful part of the whole space. It's like, I just want to, people feel compelled to give into like, explore things that they need to, just, not based on sometimes any type of monetary reward or anything. It's just like you fuck with these people, you consider them good friends, you consider them incredible colleagues or creatives and people that you respect the fuck out of. So like writing articles and like writing, poetry based on, pieces or collaborating is, I think, the best part about the space. But really, I mean,
absolutely. I think like one of the reasons we do this show is, there's a lot of negative vibes in the space, and that's so funny.
Oh, that is dope.
Let me get in my office. I have it carefully framed so you don't see the mess. And I was moving something around and I heard it fall. Isn't that awesome?
That's so dope. And your office isn't a mess, man. It looks great. My bad.
You guys see off screen. It's like this is carefully curated shot. If the camera was to move 1 inch in either direction.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, look, one of the big things I try to do and pull together here is, I think this technology NFTs has such huge possibilities, and bringing together the people who are an example of how it should be, both through the art and through how they live, is exactly right, Di. And I think, everyone here is an example of that. What I'd love to hear from you guys, given your longevity in the space, how are you feeling about this space now? What's changed that you're excited about? What are you less excited about or worried about, or anything right now, given kind of your long history? Any thoughts about sort of where we are today and how to think about it in the context of history?
I'm wondering how controversial I get, so I'll probably stay on the less controversial side.
Yeah, bring it, buddy. Bring it.
Well, I'll jump into what we've already been talking about, how great it used to be, and there used to be these trades, and automatically was given if you bought someone's art, they seemed to be right back into your art. So there was this total creator economy back and forth. And what I've seen that's disappointed me is, and I'm going to be very careful here because I understand artists have to make a living, is it has become there's been a little greed popping up. And I think that this greed has like put a little, obviously when the money shows up and everyone's worried about every decision being based on money, it gets dicey and it gets, I don't know. I do sense a little more greed right now. Oh, here's the example.
Like a focus on the money and not the art. The money, my view is like, do great, amazing, cool, creative stuff, and the money will come, as opposed to how can I grab the most bucks, which is, I think, what you're saying.
And this actually might be kind of, but right now the traditional art world has 100 superstar artists making multi-million dollars at a handful of galleries. I always thought the crypto art world was going to be
100 artists, 4 galleries.
What's 100 artists, 4 galleries? Yeah, and then there's 1,000 artists in the world that are making 6 figures and up, making really good livings. But after that, everyone's a professor or they have another job like I did for 18 years to support their art. But I was hoping instead of 100 artists making millions, I was hoping this new crypto art thing would be 1 million artists making 100,000, which is a great living in the States, or whatever you're, and part of that is I think that artists shouldn't get too greedy, and I'm trying to lead by example. It's like, I want us to stay independent. Like I want all the artists to stay as indie as possible. And I'm not judging artists that have signed up with galleries, because you got to do what you can to make. But I'm hoping as many artists as possible do not go the gallery route. Stay independent, and only if we stay independent will we realize that. We realize something where there's 1 million of us making a living as opposed to 100 of us making millions. And and so and that I guess that's not that controversial. But what it does do is I do have a criticism of artists when they get too greedy, and they're already, like, for me, I'll use myself as an example. I could easily get an assistant and I could easily double my output, but I've decided to rubber band myself. Why do I need to make more? I am already fortunate enough to have a studio. I have about a year or two of work that I can do. I have money, a year or two of runway. To double my sales, I actually believe, is to take sales away from another artist. So I'm learning to be happy with what I got and not get an assistant, not get a gallery to sell more of my art, and to stay steady. And if every artist did that, there would be 1 million artists making a living. So, and that's a controversial part. As an artist, don't try and take too much. Be happy once you're successful.
I love imagining like Zack or I coming in and just being like, "Shut the fuck up! That's not how it should be," and it turns into like turns into like Hardball with Chris Matthews.
Yeah.
Like,
Zack is the reason I'm like this. Actually,
No,
just keeps
course.
me honest. Zack has never let me do an open edition. That's totally Zack.
Well, me and Zack are in the same camp there, man.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a super beautiful sentiment. I mean, like, and I think even like, not knowing anyone's financial situation or whatever, I think that there needs to be I feel you with that sense of, the greedy clause a little bit, where it's just like, trying to take a step back and even just consider pieces a little bit more versus just the onslaught of shit, on Twitter or whatever. And like, being able to appreciate the pieces that you see for a moment, or write an article, or, reply something that it made you feel or something versus just the, again, transactional state, because it's like, that's what crushes, I think, is just the tendency to not consider the art that's being produced anymore. And just having it be another item on the feed is like really rough, I think, and like really fuck stuff up.
Yeah, no, and I just realized something. The reason I'm saying I'm always careful and I always support artists. I just criticize open editions, and then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, you have one, but I have yours, and yours was awesome. So it's not a steadfast rules, because yours is a book with all your responses to the. Do you have that one too, Zack? Did you break your rule and get that open edition, or you're like, no open editions?
No, the only open edition I've ever bought was when I tweeted some negative comment about a Nifty Gateway open edition, and then Nifty Gateway screenshotted it and sold it as an open edition. And
that's legendary. I didn't see that. I've never seen that.
Basically, they were like, "Look, we're going to sell this as an open edition. We'll give it to any charity you want." And
that's
I was
cool.
Like, sure, yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm cool with that. And like, honestly, like, I mean, my views have evolved a lot over the years. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes I think I made was being too strict with myself in my personal beliefs early on, and not really being open to not being open to like
flexible
ideas. Like I was really, really, hyper focused on scarcity and, one of ones. And so like when the large generative series started coming out at first, like I wasn't really early on a lot of that, because to me, I was like, I'd rather just, stay focused on one of one. I don't really, see the value with there being so many of them. Like I always, thought that once the market really grew, the market for larger series would be much more interesting. But I think that, by kind of being really strict in my personal beliefs, it really kind of limited me from a lot of opportunities over the last few years. That being said, when it comes to like how the space has changed, I mean, how has it not changed? I mean, it's a totally different world now. One of the things that, was so special about the old days was just that, it really was just like this group of artists and like three collectors just kind of buying each other's work, making friends on the internet, dreaming about like what this could, one day be. Like we would like often like talk in the Telegram channels about like, will Christie's or Sotheby's ever enter this space? And like, I'm not even really sure that we even wanted them to enter the space at that time, but like, it was a conversation that we all thought would eventually happen, but like 3 years later, no way. And so I think what happened, like obviously 2021 was just absolutely insane, set unreal, ridiculous expectations for many, many people. And I think one of the things that like, makes me a bit sad in the current market is that, I think a lot of artists feel this pressure to uphold the insanity of the pricing they were getting in 2021. And in a way, it, is limiting them from really creating and experimenting in this new world today. If the prices will get back to 2021 numbers again, like is yet to be seen. Nobody knows. Like we're all hopeful. I think it will happen for some artists and some collections. But I'm not sure that we'll ever see the insanity of like every single piece being minted going for insane prices. And so, I think that it's, obviously I never like to tell artists like what they should do, but, my advice at the moment is like, don't think about it too hard. Like try to get back into the mindset of like having fun with it. Like try to get back into the mindset of like not being so concerned about the pricing and just create and get your stuff out there right now. Like I really think that like the collectors and the artists like you're triggering reserves on SuperRare weekly, daily now. Like the collectors that are staying involved right now are the collectors that are gonna be killing it in a year or two. And so whether your pricing comes down a bit or not right now, I just think that, it's best for artists to stay engaged. If you're not going to mint, stay engaged in other ways, collect, join, podcasts and Twitter spaces, support other artists. But I'm seeing just way too many people just kind of, in a sense, saying, fuck it, like I'll just chill on the sidelines until the money's back. And I really think that the people that are gonna be the X copies of the next bull market are gonna be the people that weren't thinking that way.
It's interesting for me to hear you guys because I've had a little bit of the opposite evolution of you, Zach. Like I've become more dogmatic, like less flexible, more firm in my beliefs, more strong if like an artist wants my advice to be like, yo, I'm not telling you how to do it, but like follow your soul. But hey, here's some stuff I think is a mistake. I was very vocally against open editions. And so interestingly, I think like the way I think about that period, even though I came in unfortunately right at the end of it in late 21, is I think whenever a new market starts, whether it's railroads, cars, I remember Pindar, we were talking about 99 earlier this morning. Like I remember there's this initial rush and that's never recreated because that's the discovery of this market. And so where I actually think we are, and Pindar, you touched on this, for better or for worse, the evidence looks to me like there'll be 100 artists and a small selection of like curators and that like, it's looking to me more than ever, it'll mimic contemporary art. And what I think has happened is because so many people came in and thought everybody would win and, were wag meat into exit liquidity, there's been a lot of losses. And actually, interestingly, it's already a risky space, But buying a Pindar, buying a roses, buying a die is a much less risky undertaking because there's evidence you're not only betting like they've had success, but you're betting on the people. Like it's almost, I hate to liken it to investing, and I like to focus on the art. But I do think that the best I see it now, I used to think the same. Like I hoped what Pindar up, I came in like, man, this is fucking awesome. And the click's all about like trying to make everyone win together. But I think more than ever, right now, there's like separation of, art. Being an artist has always been hard. Living on art has never been easy. There's always just been a small group. And so my advice to artists is if you have to live off NFTs, chances are you won't do well because you'll be forced to release and do supply stuff that'll wreck you. And that you should work and do other stuff until you have the means to be free here. And true creativity and freedom is possible with that flexibility. And so it's interesting for me to hear you guys, were really interesting for me to hear your thoughts and perspective. And it's always fun for me when they, guys, when people I love, like we sort of look at something and I bet though, Zach, there's almost never anything you and I have disagreed on, whether it's an artist or, other issues. So I bet, I came here, you came here, and we're probably similar.
Yeah. The first time we ever had a phone call, we were both like, yeah, we're like the same fucking person.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I was like, I love this motherfucker. Okay, I can keep going, but my favorite is when the guests ask us or hop in with a question. I can keep going, but I think what makes this different.
Yeah, I have a question for. Yeah, I have a question for Pindar, dude. So like, you're with all these machines all the time, and like you're like constantly training them, and like more or less probing the mind of like artificial intelligence. Do you ever have those kind of like ex machina moments when you're doing this shit where like you're considering your own like consciousness and stuff? I feel like I would be freaked the fuck out in your studio, dude. Like I don't know.
That's the root of it. That's the root of it, guys. No, I don't go this deep. I used to go really into technical details, but I don't go this deep because it bores people. But that's the root of it. The root of it is the more generative I make my machines, the more I realize that my studio art is probably generative, and that all art is probably generative. And meaning like even studio artists and then like think about what makes a successful artist. They usually have a look and an algorithm they follow to make art, right?
Yeah,
and then
it has to be recognizable.
Yeah,
it has to be immediately recognizable as that artist, which by definition, you're right, means
they're following an algorithm. Yeah. Right. But then I go too deep on this die. I started saying stuff like, okay, if my creativity is deterministic in an algorithm, is my entire day an algorithm, and I'm just like walking around like doing deterministic things and have no free will. And I don't like to go there, and I'm not there yet. And that's why I actually like the quantum computers in my art now, because I found out that from quantum scientists, I have no idea why, and everyone that goes into quantum stuff, they get confused. Random stuff happens at the atomic level, and so that means it's not deterministic. And of course, our brains are made of atoms. So like I often think to myself, I go so deep that I often think to myself, is the only reason I have free will and consciousness because of quantum effects, because of that randomness. Otherwise, we'd just be this deterministic Newtonian machine, cause and effect, chemical reactions. No matter what situation we get into, it's predetermined. So our only hope is quantum computers.
Well, and I think with quantum, the difference in regular physics, if you know all the inputs, you can predict the output.
Yeah.
And I think what Pindar's saying, I'm no quantum expert.
No, do it. You're better than me.
If you know all the inputs, even with quantum, you can't predict the output.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what he means by true randomness, which is correct.
Yeah, that's true.
Gotcha.
And that's why it's cool. And that's why I like it for generative art too. Because like the art blocks model of this generative one of X collections is it's deterministic. You have that seed and you can repeat the art over and over again. The reason I use robots and they paint and they drip paint everywhere and they make a mess. I'm taking pictures of that as the input. The serendipity of the art is actually adding to the randomness. Those are quantum effects because the paint is made of atoms.
Yeah.
There's chaos theory there. But I was never able to take that into the digital realm, like with ByteGANs, until I started using quantum computers.
Interesting.
And so that's at the deep. But like I've found, like I've tried to really I've tried to really simplify the explanation of my art. I used to say,
well, you can dumb it down because you're.
okay, I'll dumb it down.
Dumb it
I
down.
used to say everything I'm telling you, and I'd be like, and I got 24 algorithms fighting, and every 100 brushes robots take a picture, and then use that picture to analyze where it's going, and then picks one of those 24 algorithms to continue. But I've just recently simplified it to like say I paint with emotion and logic guided by reflection. That's how I paint. A little emotion, a little logic, and then guided by reflection. And so I'm trying to teach my computers and robots to paint that like that. To use neural nets to be expressive, to use procedural AI to be technical, to get stuff like contrast, and then to use feedback loops to be reflective, to take a picture and think, what should I do next? Should the next brushstroke be emotional, or should the next mark be a pen? And I've even taken it to, if you look at the robots in the background, they're new. They're called feedback, and they're now one robot arm that has paintbrushes, and all my neural nets run through that paintbrush. And one of them has one plotter, and the other has 3 plotters, and those hold markers and pens. And all the logical, technical stuff is done with markers and pens. So my new work, when you look at it, you'll be able to see what was made with emotional decisions, what was made with logical decisions.
Oh, that's sick, dude.
And
well, and also, yeah,
and that's brand new. First painting tomorrow on SuperRare. First painting to use these machines.
That's fucking sick. Holy shit.
Thanks,
Wait,
man.
so is one of those up back there then, or?
Yeah. Which one?
You gotta bring one of those forward a little bit. I feel like at some point, like one of the ones
there. You can see on his web. Yeah.
Yeah. If you, sure, I will.
His website has insane
okay, cool.
videos too.
I don't mind. I'd love to. I mean, it's going to be on SuperRare. No reserve option.
Plug it up, dude. Because I find this. Because not only is this like a super fascinating, I mean, this is like an insane process, but also I think it feeds into the debate. Dude, that is so fucking sick.
So like
holy
you can see the brush strokes, and you can see the texture. And so thanks,
that
man.
is wild.
Well, so to keep with our not be greedy theme, no reserve auction. How many artists do that?
That's sick.
Only the smart ones. No, seriously. Another thing, Zach, I give advice. I'm like, the market sets the price. You tell people about the art and why it matters and what you did.
Yeah. And everybody has a chance. That's what I love about it. Although you do get, I'll be straight with you. I do get, not hate mail, but I get concern from collectors that were collecting in 2021. It's like, look, you got to protect that. And I was like, I do protect my floor.
That's the way by the way, that's the way you protect it. It's like your house. If you price it the house the price you want to sell it at, you don't get competing bidders. The way you get high prices in an auction is get multiple bidders competing. So the more bidders competing, the higher the price goes. That's how you protect them, and you don't control the market. That's why I always tell artists too, don't tweet about floor price, because you're going to have to tweet about it when it goes down too. It's out of your control. Tweet about stuff that's in your control. Your process, why it's cool, why your art matters, how you make it, why Zack's so handsome, stuff like that.
Well, with that, because Pindar, and that's the other thing. Like, and we'll flip it over to Zack and OG too, because it's like there was a debate somewhere on the interwebs the other day within the butthole of Twitter or whatever, where there was a discussion in terms of like physical versus digital versus like should you have accompanying physicals to digital pieces. And I know, so Pindar, you and I both do that. Like, I paint all the time, and pretty much now all of my digitals generally have physicals with them, because I feel like I need to tell that story continuously through words, through paint, and through pixels. So yeah, OG and Zack, I mean, and then Pindar potentially after. Like, what do you guys think? Are you on board? Is there a hindrance with having a physical component to digital? And is that something then, if there is, do you seek out digital only? Or, and I know Zack, you have a bunch of fucking dope physicals behind you, so I kind of know your thoughts on this, but it would be interesting to hear about what your perspective is there. Is there a hindrance to the digital movement with the physical components to the digital pieces?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly, my opinion on this too has shifted over the years. Like, if you would have asked me back in 2019, 2020, like, I had very little interest in collecting physicals, and I felt like there being a physical could potentially actually hurt the value of the digital being the only existing artwork. But I've really kind of evolved that thinking over time. At the moment, I'm absolutely loving, having physicals attached to works. I think the main thing is that it just needs to be super clear that, the physical is a bonus to collecting the digital work. And, that's, where it sometimes gets hairy or gray, is just that, like, if, the digital alone is worth 10 ETH, but with the physical, it's worth 20 ETH, but people don't actually know the physical was part of it, then does it like overinflate the value of the digital pieces? But realistically, I mean, and it may be because I have a house now that I have places to put art, and so it's easier to like art when you actually can put it up. But yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the artist, whatever they want to do. I mean, obviously for an artist like Pindar, where all of them are, being created on physical canvases to start anyways, like that makes total sense for the physical aspect to be included or offered. But there's also, as we know, like anonymous collectors out there that just don't want to deal with physicals because that requires giving your address to get it shipped to you. And so either way, I mean, I think it just depends on the artist. As long as the type of art and the style is, really like, as long as the release is improved and cooler with a physical, then I think it's cool. Like if it's, a digital piece that, there's just like kind of like a screenshot of it, and it's, maybe less interesting, but like, again, depends on the art, depends on the artist. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate because I've seen people heavily on both sides of the argument, and I've lived on both sides of the argument. But I remember actually like collecting an early Osinachi piece back in the day, and he was represented by Kate Vass Gallery at the time. And I remember like going on Kate Vass's website and seeing that she was like selling the physical painting to the NFT that I had just bought. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I thought I owned this image. But then it kind of all started to make more sense to me that like that physical piece having value only makes the digital piece have value as well.
It's interesting to hear you, Zach, because my view is if you have an NFT and it can be, hey, I can trade this for a physical piece and burn it. Huge mistake, price limiting. I think the situation you just outlined, I'd probably not be happy with that personally if I had like an NFT and somebody sold the physical. The way I generally think about this is, first, if you're somebody who creates physicals and sells them, I still think, interestingly, if you look at the buyers for physical art versus digital art, they actually have very low overlap. And so I think if you're creating physical works to sell, you should sell those in the separate channel. And it's actually an opportunity, especially in a market like this, for artists to make money in a way that won't impact their NFTs. Meaning if Zack or Pindar or Dai goes out and starts selling no digital version, just physicals to people, I actually think it doesn't impact currently the ecosystem. People do not view them in the same bucket. I think in terms of like authenticity, to me, like what makes a beautiful artist, we've talked about some of the traits over time here, immediately recognizable. Authenticity at the core, to me, is like, somehow it's one of these things, like it's hard to put a finger on, but it's like, I know when I see it. And so I think if the physical work, like, I have this Dai piece here and the ultimate piece looks different, but this was the base of it. And I have an Adam Disbrow piece. Sorry, Dai, I had a little mounting issues. That's why it's there. The garage is still underway. But if it's an authentic part of the piece and like, I started here and then it became this, and like, to me, you're selling a narrative with each piece of art. You're saying something and you're trying to say it in a cool way that helps us like look at the world or look at something differently and feel and connect. And so to me, it really is, I think if it's done authentically as part of the process, like I'm all hyped. And like Zach said, if you have a house, it's dope. You can have them around, and it's like every time, you can have it to discuss. But that's really how I view it, is like, it can't be a NFT burn for a thing. You can create, like Gabe Weiss, for example, who's one of the best selling like artists in the Bay Area. He sells a ton of physicals. Like, he's made a ton of physicals he sells that he makes no NFTs for. And to me, that's a perfect example. And then, like I said, if you get it as part of the process, like Pindar, is that all you guys, I'm like, oh, that'd be amazing. So that's sort of how I think about it.
Makes sense.
I have so much to say on this, but I'll keep it short. But both what you all said makes sense. But there's another one from the artist perspective, and that's this old thing I learned in art school: is the medium has to be purposeful, right? Like, like there has to be a reason you're doing something as a painting. There has to be a reason you choose. One of my favorite pieces of art was self-portraits done with chocolate, and the reason they chose chocolate was body issues and soap and so like. But the medium's important. So with this one, the one that's on SuperRare tomorrow, it is for a 100% on-chain piece of artwork. That's what the auction is for. And this painting is an artifact. And each of them, like I'll show it again. Each of them.
Is it linked to on-chain? Does it
No,
have
they're not linked. They're two different pieces of art. This is free if you want to claim it. If not, I'll keep it in my collection. And the medium is important. Like for this, the medium is the texture. It's a painting and it's a drawing. It's multimedia. It's got spray paint, acrylic paint, markers. And so the texture is really important. And the detail is really important. For the on-chain work, it's important that it's on the Ethereum blockchain and that it's 100% on-chain. There's no image file, and it's animated. That's really important too, I think, for my digital work anyway, to take advantage of everything that Medium has to offer. So they should not be linked. They're two different, in my opinion, they're two different pieces of artwork. And I've had similar experiences with you, Zach, with the prints. I've had digital artwork, and all of a sudden there's a print. And I was like, why did I get the digital work if there's just a print?
That's how I feel. I'm the same way.
But then I realized they're different things. And I'm happy with my digital artwork. But
Pindar, I learned that about the medium with tattoos. Like some things, well, just that, like the topography of your arm, something works as a tattoo, but not as something else. Cause like the space, you're in movement versus a flat versus digital. So that's where I really began to appreciate like placement and the topography. Cause like tattoos, it's all about something that's cool as a tattoo may not be cool flat, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, everything's related to the medium. A weird one, I'm looking at Zach's portrait. A weird one I've learned with portraits is when you're doing a painting, you can't show teeth in a smile, and it's just this medium that goes all the way back to Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Mona Lisa is like, teeth in a painting looks cheesy, teeth in a photograph looks great. It's just the medium and like paying attention to those details. So.
Well, I think I dig that part about purpose too, because it's not like it's not like you're just painting those things like literally with from your butt. It's not like you're programming your ass to paint those things. It's like an AI portrait. You know what I mean? It's like, no, this is like a very specific process, like something that I have to communicate, something that I've worked very hard to train the machines to get this done. So I feel like that with all art, on top of, mediums, on top of anything else, I think that Pindar, you probably agree with this, and Zack and OG, is just, you can sense the purpose within the pieces. Like you can sense the purpose within the physical piece. You can sense the emotion that's been instilled into that piece. You can sense why, the digital piece may perhaps looks a little bit differently or, has a different story to tell than the physical. And I think that's like the truly, that's whenever I'm really moved by a piece of art. It's like when you can really feel that purpose from the artist and the necessity they have to communicate whatever that emotion is within those brush strokes or within the pixels. So I think that's Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that you do really well, Dai. Like, I love your paintings. Like, I've got one right here. I've got one in the closet still waiting to be framed. But like, you basically do like a whole different take on the digital piece. And it's like, it's a completely different artwork, but it's the same theme, and it's like your take through a different medium. And that type of combo, to me,
that's the shit.
Both of them more valuable, because they're not like they're two totally different artworks with the same sort of story and but like expressed in a different way from you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, it's important. A mistake. I'll own up to a mistake I made in the very beginning in my most valuable work that's in LACMA right now. Cosimo bought is I was just in the beginning, Zach knows this, I was making robot paintings and taking photos of them and selling them. And I felt like, and this is like my journey, my 5-year journey, I felt like an imposter in the beginning because everyone else is doing digital artwork and I'm just doing like, I'm just a physical painter posing as a digital artist. And so that's like, that's, luckily it took me 5 years to figure out, but that's part of my arc of going, like, I like to say now that I was an AI artist using the blockchain to sell crypto, to sell art, right?
Yep.
AI artist using crypto to sell. But now it's gone like 5 years later. I'm a crypto artist, and I'm proud of that distinction. That's using the blockchain to make art, and it's like my ByteGans and the one that's on SuperRare tomorrow is 100% on chain. The medium, the canvas, is the blockchain.
Yeah,
and it's very expensive to do that. So I think it's hard to do it too. I had to learn how to write contracts. So
actually,
that's the thing that I think has been so fucking cool about you, Pindar, is like you've really dove in and learned the tech. I mean, you're now like a pro on smart contracts, helping other artists launch their own series now and launch their own like series using different, things really that all go back to artist sovereignty. And like one of the things that we all really believe in, giving artists the ability to make their own decisions with their contracts. But that's been really, I mean, you should share some of the different series that you've helped other artists make. I know you did one with Anne and Spouter and Nori Harmon and a bunch of other killer artists. But like now artists are going to Pindar, who 5 years ago was just a painter with the robot, that now he's like helping others create smart contracts, which is fucking killer. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, man. That's my favorite project right now, Sovereign, and like in getting artists onto these contracts. And there's other, and it's also about the sovereign artist. And this is like another distinction. I'm not criticizing the way other people do it, but I love that Sovereign, there's no royalties. It's a drop studio that does not take royalties. They help the artist. They do it for a fee, of course. I think it's going to be 15 to 20%. But then after that, the artist owns the contract. There's no sharing of royalties, and it's all about so they do it on the artist's wallet, which is very important to me. I learned that. That's another thing I learned from Zack. It's absolutely important that it's done on the artist's wallet, and the artist is the one to sign it. And that's what Sovereign does. And I'm trying my best, Zack, and Zack's working with me, and Charles is like to bring Sovereign to SuperRare because I think these contracts are very valuable. And you guys have done it with Manifold, so. And you've done it with mine. You got my ByteGans on there. You got a bunch of my contracts on there. So, and that's actually been an inspiration how SuperRare does things.
Pindar, actually, I want to kind of segue. There were two things I'd like to segue to something you mentioned. I'm, of course, not even in the beginning realm near you guys, but one of the challenges I think for artists sometimes is when you look back at prior work. How do you feel about prior work? Many of the best artists I know look at some of their work and are like, fuck, I hate this piece of shit. Like, I don't want to look at it. Others feel happy. And then I do want to talk platforms towards the end. But I would love, like, how do you deal with looking at older works? Like you were saying, that lack of feeling. And, Zack and Pindar, how do you guys, when you look at your early work, you like, this is amazing, I'm excited? Or are you like, fuck, man.
Fuck, man, I wish the blockchain. That's the problem with the blockchain. Oh my gosh. The one that, I cringe that I used to take photos of paintings. Like, I cringe. I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, like the first artwork I ever created is probably my favorite artwork I've ever created. Autonomous Art owns it. I spent more time on that piece than I've ever spent on any piece because it was like I felt like a total imposter trying to like come into this thing with other artists, and so I needed to like put something out that like felt really digital, and like I spent all this time learning. But I love a lot of my old pieces, but I mean, it's funny. I mean, I actually haven't
they are really good. Both your guys' old work. See, I hate my old rap I'm like, oh, turn it off. It's just fucking terrible. So, yeah, hit him.
All right. So like one of the things that's always, and I think I know the answer to this question, but One of the things that's always been really impressive about Pindar is that since like the very beginning, he's been a big supporter of other artists. Like there's a lot of artists in the space that sell art, make a ton of money, and don't put anything back into the space or supporting other artists. And Pindar's always been somebody that's put, I mean, I would imagine most, if not all, of what he was earning back in the day back into collecting. But like it also led to him having what I believe is one of the most epic art collections of any artist out there. But Pindar, if you could travel back in time and not have sold an artwork that you did sell, which one would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not what you're thinking. Zach is thinking it's the X
No,
copy.
I'd like you to answer that too, Zach.
Yeah, I want Zach's. Zach's thinking it's the X copies because I had his Genesis piece, and I sold a couple for around 100 ETH. But no, it's interesting. It's not the X copies. It would be. I was thinking about this the other day. You know what it was? Oh, this is a weird one. It would be Hackatow's very early, those ones with the nuclear weapon behind Mao or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I sold it to Cody, and the reason I regret it is because that's when SuperRare used to let you do editions. That was one of the few ones on SuperRare, and it was also portraits, and I love portraits. And the X copies I love, X copy was the person selling his artwork was the reason I was able to afford a studio and go full time, and then which turned into like my artwork being self-sufficient. So I'll always have that. But they got the problem with this is an interesting problem, and this is a problem I'm seeing a lot of people have with with the X copies. I had an asset that was so valuable that I would have been ruined emotionally if it got stolen from me. You know, like one of them was like $500,000. If that got stolen from me, like I'm seeing these constant thefts online, and I'm not scared. I'm not a wimp. But I was like, you know what? I don't want to own something that if it's stolen from me in an environment where there's a lot of theft, that it would like ruin me emotionally. I'd probably live the rest of my life. If that wallet got compromised, I'd live the rest of my life so that I could have been a millionaire. And so that's why I sold those. And I don't regret it because it led to my career. Like, you know, like who do I believe in more, X copy or myself? And I love X copy, but I like myself more. I like my art more. So it's that Hackatow. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I keep on telling Cody to give it back, to sell it back.
I had that one of those editions too.
Oh, you have one of those?
I unfortunately sold it as well.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I was thinking you were gonna. So like one of the old debates, and like when I very early on in like when I started collecting, like I had this like gut instinct that the token ID was going to be important later down the line, like how early they were on SuperRare, like the tokens. And a lot of people at the time were saying like, no, that's stupid. Like no one's ever going to care about like which number it was. Like it's going to be based on the art. And then I really thought that it, you know, was going to be a thing. And so like I went and I was like searching for the earliest possible tokens, and so the first 4 SuperRare tokens are Robbie Barrett, and then token 5 is an X copy, and token 6, basically tokens like 5 through 17 are X copies. It's called the X12. It's like those first X copy 12. And I remember going, and his Genesis and his second piece were both available for $100. And I was like, well, it'd be fucking insane to buy both of these. Like that's $200. So I clearly have to pick one. And I went and like I ended up picking Feeding, which wasn't the Genesis. It was like the 6th ever token, but I loved the artwork. I ended up paper handing that one to Bat Soup a couple years ago, but that's also how I, you know, got a down payment for the house I'm sitting in now. But yeah, no, Pindar then shortly after bought token 5, which was the X copy Genesis. And I remember like us two kind of going back and forth as X copy, like, cause there was multiple periods in like SuperRare's kind of wave of time where new kind of wave of collectors would come in and they'd always just be bigger than the last. And so we had this like first wave of like VK Crypto and Seb Momus and like mod rats, and they were all spending, you know, hundreds, thousands of dollars. But like to us, that was like insane that they're spending that much. And then the next wave was like Whale Shark came in, and Pablo and Colborn, and they started spending like more than those early collectors. And like we were like, holy shit, like people were spending thousands of dollars on these. And like at the time I had maybe 12 or 13 X copies from SuperRare. Sold a lot of them during that like second little bull run, like before the actual bull run when these things were going for insane amount of money. But I remember always like checking in with Pindar about like, what do you think, man? Like we have the 2 best X copies, like should we sell them? Like what are you thinking? And I forget who sold theirs first. I think you might have sold yours first.
It was the first one that would go for 100. I realized if I was a better negotiator, I could have got 200, but I was happy with 100 because that was me going solo. That was like, wow, this could fund my studio for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then, but you know, what's funny is then you did yours. I think we were talking. We're always back and forth over whether or not. Then I saw you sell yours, and I was like, oh my gosh, Zack knows something I don't. And I immediately listed in my last.
That's the best.
I mean, it goes back to like how I've always like my viewpoints were just too like what's the word? Like
dogmatic.
Yeah, basically like X Copy started like minting a bunch of multi editions and doing rareable and like trying all the platforms, and I was like, this guy's supply is blowing up. Like I should take crypto as all I can. Like I totally was fucking wrong.
No matter what you did, Zack, at least you got a house out of it. VK Crypto went on a fire sale of like 20 of them, and he was selling them for $1,000, $2,000 a piece. That's where I bought 2 of them from. So, we worked for it. But you know, that's what's interesting is, as bad as it sounds, though the current prices for X copies are down to where we sold. That's where they're moving at right now. So we didn't get at the top of the mountain, but we got a fair price for them.
Those are high class problems.
Yeah, I know, first world problems.
We're running out of time here. I did want to ask what you guys thought was the future of platforms. I know we don't have enough time, but if you don't want to answer that, why don't you, in the last closing minutes here, anything we haven't discussed you'd like to share? Any thoughts? Any other questions?
I'll go on. I'll do both. I'll go to the future.
Yeah, I would love even just a quick summary. Like, what's the role of platforms in the future NFTs?
Future of platforms is what I've been inspired by SuperRare and just independent sovereign artists. And I really encourage artists to stick with the independent sovereign, because that's what separates us and that's what makes us special. And so that's what gives a lot of oxygen to a lot of artists around the world. Like, let's not go the way of 100 artists defining contemporary art. Let's go the way of 1 million artists defining crypto art. And SuperRare is leading the way and the inspiration of like what I'm doing at Sovereign as well.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting question. You know, the space has changed so much over the 5 years that I've been a part of it. The bull run brought an insane amount of like really, really smart people to the space that have contributed so much to bringing the tech along a really long way in a few short years. And so for me, it's really hard to picture like what the tech is going to look like a few years from now, because 1, I'm not an engineer, but 2, like the tech is increasing at such a fast rate right now that it's just, I expect it to be exponential. And so artists are going to continue having more and more incredible options. And I think that artists are going to continue moving the way of using their own custom contracts in, you know, just to basically have full sovereignty over their contracts, over their art, over what they're doing. And so I think the role of platforms is going to really like come down to discovery. Like the platform that nails discovery is going to be the platform, or one of the platforms that really wins. Like that's the big problem that no one's been able to solve yet. That I'm, very hopeful. SuperRare has an incredible plan for how to potentially solve with our upcoming staking launch. But I think it's really going to come down to platforms figuring out how to improve discovery for the artists, but also figure out how to be able to give artists access to the ever-growing list of options that they're going to have. I mean, the amount of options available right now.
The tools, all the innovative tools.
For sure.
Well, it's honestly, I could do this all day, and you guys are such a joy to hang out with. I know he jumped off, but always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always a joy to hang out with you guys and learn, and I hope the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. Love you guys, and thanks again.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, guys. All right, you're the best.
Pindar on SuperRare tomorrow.
Pindar on SuperRare tomorrow. Don't sleep.
Yeah, tomorrow.
What time's the drop?
Noon Eastern. Noon Eastern.
Noon Eastern. Super-rare.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Much love. Great having everybody. I made it through with COVID, so I think it went pretty well. Yeah, dude. I tested positive this morning for COVID. So, all right. Much love, man. You guys are the best.
See you later, man.
Money never sleeps.
Money never sleeps.